I want to begin by davening that the zchut of our learning should help to bring home the final hostage and protect our soldiers, Am Yisrael, and all the innocents, and be an Ilui Neshama for those who were killed in Australia, and bring a refuah shlema for all those who were injured.
Made.
Okay, so last time we were looking at this sugya of Mishnah Falav Mapolet, right? So this is the Mishnah, and the Mishnah says if Mapolet falls on somebody, then we have to uh, no. It says that we have different sfekot, right? So safek husham, safek enu sham, safek chai, safek mate, and safek Yisrael, safek nachri. In all these cases, mefakrin, we uncover the rubble. So the Gemara said, it's just a quick review. It's a uhu chai mefakrin, right? So it's a quote from the Mishnah. And the Gemara said, if you find him alive, pshita, obviously you're going to uncover the rubble, right? Because he's alive, so you want to save his life. The Gemara said, so why do I need it? Lo, tzrich, I need it, afilu chayesha. I need it to tell me that I'm going to continue to try to keep him alive, even if he's only going to live for a short time. So we'll come back to this concept, but the chayesha, the way we defined it last week is that it's that he's not necessarily going to live for much longer. There's not a definite time frame here, but the idea is that as long as you can keep him alive, the more you can keep him alive, the better. Uh, Even to the extent that you'll be Machal Shabbat in order to do that. The mate yanichuhu, if you find him dead, you leave him. The Gemara said that's also obvious. And we said we need that because of Rabbi Yehuda ben Lakish, because Rabbi Yehuda ben Lakish told us that in a Braita that he held that you save a corpse from a fire, right? So if there's a fire on Shabbos, you're allowed to save the corpse, meaning you will remove him from wherever he is to be out of the way of the fire. And I don't think we saw Rashi here, so I'll just add this in. Shmatzilina tamet. So Rashi says l'chatzer hamu'urevet, right? So you save him to a courtyard that has an eruv that's mu'urevet, right? So the classic case of eruv, what we call a eruvei chatzerot, was based on the idea that the neighborhoods were built the way you see the neighborhoods were built in Mea Sharim or in Nachlaot. That is, you had houses probably in a rectangular formation that, and then there was a courtyard in front of them, but the whole thing was like blocked off by the houses. And what was the Eruv? What made it an Eruv?
You're asking
I'm
us.
asking everybody, what is Eruv Chatzirot? So you have a formation of houses in this block formation. So what makes it a Chatzer Mu'urevet?
It's completely enclosed.
No,
No.
that's not what makes it. That's not what makes the Eruv. What makes the Eruv? You would think that because you're used to this idea that we have like a string around an area. And so if you have a block of houses that comprise a rectangle or a square or something, but that's not it.
Well, it has. Is it? Forgive me. I mean, I probably, I vaguely remember this, but if it's isn't like that was declared an error, and then it's like some kind of food that's held in common, or
Yes,
food that's held in common.
it doesn't have to be cooked food, but it has to be food.
Melt and common.
And yes, so you pick one of the houses and you put food in there. You put in uh you can put in like a challah, you can put in a piece, like a bread or something like that. And the idea being that everybody in the chatzer has a part of that food. And so it's as if it's a legal fiction that on Shabbos, then everybody shares that space. And it's symbolized by having food in common. And that's the term eruv. Eruv means to mix, right? It's a mixture. So what the mixture is that everybody sort of pulls together to buy the food, like they mix their food together. And that's the Chatzer HaMu'revet. Okay, so what's the problem? If you have a dead body on Shabbos, let's say, so let's assume it's in a Reshut HaYachid, right? So why wouldn't you save it mipnei hadleika? So for one, the corpse itself is actually muktzah, right? There's nothing you can do with a corpse on Shabbos. So technically it's muktzah. But in order to save the corpse so that the corpse isn't desecrated, so Rabbi Yehuda ben Lakish says that you can remove it from a fire, right, so that it's not desecrated by the fire. And Rashi says, so where are you going to remove it to? So he says you take it to a Chatzer HaMe'urevet, Deleka Isur Ela Tiltul, right? The only Isur here is Tiltul. The only Isur is moving it. Even though it's muktzah, you'll be allowed to move it under these circumstances. But what if you can't take it to a chatzer me'urevet? So what would that mean? You'd have to take it to where? I mean, what are the options?
Maybe Rishut HaRabim.
You could take it to a Shut Harabim, you could take it to a chatzer that's not me'urevet, which for these purposes
Is Rishut HaRabim.
might be the same thing. It's not technically a Reshut Harabim, but you're not allowed to be motzi from a Reshut Yachid into a Chatzer She'ena Me'urevet. If you take it to Reshut Harabim, then certainly that's an Isur D'Oraita. So, what Rashi is saying is that Rabbi Yehuda ben Lakish is allowing you to remove it, provided that you can take it to a Chatzer Me'urevet, where there is no Isur D'Oraita of hotza'ah, of taking it from one domain to another domain, and the only isur would be an isur of muktzah, of tiltul. Tiltul is moving. So that's just to clarify that statement. So the Gemara is saying, um, we want to understand, why did the Mishnah say meit yanichuhu? If you find the person dead, that you leave him. That seems to be obvious. And so the Gemara says, I need it because of the Dayah of Rabbi Yehuda ben Lakish, who says that you can remove a corpse from a fire. And so what did we say? It would seem that with Rabbi Yehuda, we might infer from that Rabbi Yehuda ben Lakish would allow you to keep digging on Shabbos to remove a corpse, because he's already matir to remove a corpse from a fire. But the Gemara goes on to say, "Bafil Rabbi Yehuda ben Lakish lo ka'amar ela mitoch shadam bahul al meito." Rabbi Yehuda ben Lakish gave this heter of removing a corpse from the fire because a person is bahul al meito, right? He's excited because of the dead person, presumably somebody he knows, somebody perhaps a close relative, perhaps a friend. Ilo sharid le ate lechabuye. If we don't allow him, literally, if you don't allow him uh, to remove the corpse, then ate, he will come, the chabuye. He'll come to put the fire out. And that's certainly an Isur Dioraita. You're not allowed to put out a fire just to save a corpse. Aval hacha ilo sharit le. But here, if you don't allow him to keep digging to remove the corpse, ma'id le lemebad. What could he do? Meaning what?
Oh, he might want to, he might put out the fire.
There's no fire.
I'm sorry, no, I'm sorry,
Michael Schwartz, do you want to say?
I'm confused. There's nothing he could do. It's not like moving the body from a fire.
So that's exactly it. This is a rhetorical question. Ma'it le'lemebad. What could he do? In other words, there's nothing he can do. In the case of the fire, so we're worried that he's going to put out the fire. So Rabbi Yehuda ben Lakish says, since I'm worried he'll put out the fire to save the corpse, I allow him to remove the corpse. But here, there's no imminent danger to the corpse if he doesn't do anything, right? And there isn't anything for him to do. So what's the conclusion of the Gemara? The conclusion of the Gemara is, so why did I put these words, V'meit yanichuhu, if he's dead, I'll leave him. It's to tell me that even according to Rabbi Yehuda ben Lakish, who allows you to remove a corpse in the face of a fire, right? He says you can remove a corpse in the face of a fire, but here where the Mishnah is stam, in other words, there is no opinion in the Mishnah that disagrees with this line that says he made yanichuhu. You might have thought that Rabbi Yehuda ben Lakish would disagree and say, no, I allow people to remove corpses on Shabbos under dire circumstances. So here it doesn't. So that's the reason that the Gemara is bringing the reason the Mishnah says he made yanichu is to make sure you understand that even according to Rabbi Yehuda ben Lakish, he would also say that if you find the person dead under the mapolat, you have to leave him. That's the chidush. Okay. Okay. So then we read the next part. So let's read this again. So Michael Werner, you're going to read Tanu Rabbanan.
Tanu Rabbanan. Thank you. Archechen hu bodek.
But
Yes. Ad hotmo. V'yesh omrim al libo.
ad.
Ad libo. Thank you.
Okay.
Badak umatza elyonim metim lo yomar kavar metu I'm sorry, I'm stumbling here.
That's okay. Take a second.
Hatonim.
Hatachtonim.
Hatachnonim, of course. Maaseh haya umatza elyonim metim betachtonim chaim.
Okay, so now translate that.
Tanu Rabbanan. Until where does one check?
Just translate.
Until his throat.
His snout.
Oh, snout. His snout.
Until his
Until his schnoz. Yes. The brood. The yesh omrim until his heart. One checks and one finds the upper part.
The uppers.
The uppers.
He finds the uppers dead.
The uppers dead. One does not declare at that point already. Um, him
You
dead.
okay? You like to embellish, but it's okay.
One does not say already dead, that the lower parts are dead already.
Not parts,
That
the
the
lowers.
lowers are
So
dead.
what are the uppers and what are the lowers?
I guess it depends on how where he is in
No, 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 no. What are the uppers and what are the lowers?
upper would be the snout and the lower would be the heart. Respiration and heartbeat, presumably.
No.
Okay.
Okay. What else could it mean? We said last week.
Bodies or
Of
corpses.
course. Oh,
The
right,
corpses.
right, right.
You find corpses on top, you find corpses below. So if he checked and he found the uppers, that is the people who were the corpses on top,
We don't know if they're corpses yet.
well, Metim, he
Oh,
finds
okay,
them
fine.
dead.
Right.
So he doesn't, so he should not say that the ones below have already died. Ma'aseh hayah, right? So there was an actual story, an actual case, and Matsu el Yonim Metim, and they found the uppers were dead and the lower ones were alive. Okay, we're going to focus again on the first part, and just to remind us. So, ad hechan hu bodek, until where does he check? So, what's this referring to in the Mishnah?
Um,
What did the Mishnah say, and what is this referring to?
so the Mishnah says if you find somebody alive, you keep digging, and you find somebody dead, you don't keep digging.
Okay, so the Mishnah said, right, if you find somebody who's, if somebody, if you find somebody upon whom a mapolet fell, then mifakrin alav, right? And they gave different sveikot, but even with all the sveikot, that you dig for him. So the Gemara is saying ad hechan hu bodek. So until where does he check? What will he be checking for?
Um, well, depending whether you're digging, if you're digging until a snout, you check the respiration. If
No,
you
well, what are you trying to determine?
whether he's alive,
Whether he's alive or dead?
look for signs of
No,
life.
right. Again, you don't have to embellish. Ad hechan hu bodek, where is he checking to? So Rashi says, Ad hechan hu bodek, im domeh lemeit sheino meziz evarav. Right? If he seems like he's dead, he's not moving his limbs. Ad hechan hu mifakeach ladat ha'amet. Until where is he going to dig to know the truth? All right, so that you find someone who seems like they might be dead because they don't show any immediate signs of life, like they're not moving. So the Tanakhama says ad chotmo, and Rashi says ad chotmo v'im ein chayut bechotmo. If there's no life in his nose, sheino motzi ruach, that he doesn't expel wind, in other words, he doesn't breathe. Vadayin mate, he's certainly dead. V'yanichuhu, and you leave him. And yeshomrim ad libo, you check until his heart. I'll just point out here because this will come up. They're different. There's another girsa here. One says until his heart, which is the one we have. Another Rishonim had here ad tiburo, until his navel, till his belly button. We'll talk about that b'hemshech, but for the moment, we'll consider them both to be the same thing. So, okay, so this is the machloket between the Tanakama and the Yeshomrim. According to the Tanakama, if you determine that he's breathing, then you will continue to dig. But if he's not breathing, you stop digging. And according to the Yeshomrim, you have to determine whether his heart is beating. Ad libo would imply that you have to find out if the heart is beating, and if the heart is beating, you continue to dig. And if not, you stop digging. And then what would each say about the other? In other words, if you find that he's breathing but the heart doesn't seem to be beating, or if you find that the heart is beating, but he doesn't seem to be breathing, what do each say about the other? So, if you understand my question, and okay, so let's put it like this: each of them, the Tanakama and the Yeshomrim, seem to be telling us what determines life and death, what determines the point of death for any given person. All right, so the person we're talking about happens to be a person who, underwent a disaster where a bunch of rocks fell on him. And so now we want to know, according to the Tanakhama, if he is breathing, you'll continue to dig. But what if you found out that his heart had stopped beating? Would you continue to dig, according to the Tanakhama?
Yes, until you uncover the nose and find out if he's breathing.
Yes. So in other words, according to the Tanakhama, the only determining factor is whether or not he's breathing. So if you found that his heart wasn't beating, and let's say you still hadn't uncovered his nose, you would still have to try to uncover his nose to find out if he's breathing. And according to the Yesh Shomrim, it's the other way around. That even if you find him breathing, but his heart has stopped beating, then you wouldn't continue to uncover him. Okay, so bear that in mind, and we're definitely going to talk more about it a little bit later in the sugya. So, Michael Schwartz, 1 second, I'm going to make this bigger. Okay, okay. So read from here, Nema.
Nema hani tanai ki hanai hani tanai titania behechen havlad notzer mirosho shenemar mima'ai imi ata gozi va'omer gazi benizrach bahashlichi.
Okay, read a little more. Abba Shaul.
Abba Shul omer mitibero umashaleach sharashav alech va'alech
Elach ve'elach.
va'elach va'elach.
Okay, so can you tell us what this means? Nema hani tanai. Go ahead.
So let's say this is a Tanaitic dispute like this Tanaitic dispute that is taught in the Baraita. From where is the Vlad Notzer produced or
Yeah, from where is he created, right? From
oh,
where
from
is
where is
he?
it created? Oh, okay. Um, from the head, as it says, from the belly of his mother, me, you, and I don't know, Gozi.
Okay, this is a little obscure, and we'll get to it, but it means, right, from the belly of my mother, you cut me out, or meaning in context that you removed me. The Omer Gazin Nizreich Vashlichi, and it also says cut Nizreich, cut your hair like a Nazir, and throw it away. All right, we're not going to spend a lot of time on the proof texts here, but for the moment, we'll just say these proof texts come to indicate that a child is born, or not born, a child is produced or created from its head. So what does it mean, Meir? What do you think that means, that the child is created from its head?
That the head forms first.
It sounds like the head forms first, and then the rest of the body would form from the head. Abba Shaul says, mitiburo. What does that mean?
From the navel, and
Mishalech
and
sharasha
and
ve'elach
Mishalech,
ve'elach.
and the roots are sent onward.
Uh-oh.
Uh,
hold on. I'm sorry, you cut out for a second. The roots.
Oh, so Abba Shaul says that from the navel, and the roots are sent further and further.
Well, yeah, like, or here and there. Elach ve'elach. It's sent here and there. In other words, so what do you think that means? The child is created from the navel, and then what happens? What are the shorashah? What are the shorashim? No answer? Wait,
My thing's not work. I'm sorry, my thing's not working again. My
yeah,
mute thing. I'm sorry. The uh, uh, um,
the child is created from the navel, and then the shorashim are sent out here and there. What do you think the shorashim are?
I did it again. It's my thing's all messed up. So yeah. Sorry.
It's okay. Try it again.
So I thought maybe it's the limbs, but I'm not sure. I'm really not
Yeah,
sure.
so that's what it sounds like. In other
Oh, okay,
words,
okay.
that the beginning of the creation of the child starts from the navel, and then the rest of the body, including the limbs, spread out from there. So, without getting into, I'm gonna for the moment, I'm gonna skip the proof texts, um, because it's not going to be so important for us right now. Although I like to do it, but let's just say we have a machloket between the Tanakama and Abba Shaul. So the Tanakama says that a child is created from its head, and Abba Shaul says that the child is created from his navel. So we introduce this by saying, let's say these Tanaim are like these Tanaim, right? So which are these and which are these? Which are which Tanaim are like which Tanaim?
So the in the first machloket with the Tanakama says the nose, and the Yeshomrim says the heart. That dispute is like the dispute over how the fetus grows in the Tanaim of that dispute.
Very good. So how would that work? We have the Tanakama in the first Braita that says that you check at Chotmo. So which Tana would he be like in this machloket?
I think the Tanakama that says that the fetus grows from the head.
Yeah, so you would think that, those two things would seem to coincide. That just like the Tanakama says that in order to determine whether someone is alive or not, you have to see if they're breathing. So that would seem to coincide with this idea that the child to begin with is created from the head, that the head is the first thing that's created. And then the second one, then the Yeshomrim would be like Abba Shaul. Yeshomrim says you check until the heart, and as I pointed out, there is a girsa that says specifically instead of heart, it says you check until the tibur, you check until the navel. And Abba Shaul says the child is created from the navel. So we want to say that these Tanaim line up with these Tanaim. So whenever we say Nema or Lema, whenever we say Nema or Lema, we usually mean let's say, but then we're going to knock it down. That's usually what that how that works, and that's exactly what happens here. Paul, do you want to read? If you do, you have to unmute yourself.
I think that would be no.
Paul? There you
כן,
go.
כן, כן.
Okay.
אפילו תמה אבא שאול, עד כאן, לה אמר אבא שאול, התם, אלא לעניין יצירה. דכל מידי ממציאתי מתצר. אבל לעניין פיקוח נפש, אפילו אבא שאול מודה בעיקר חיותה באפיהו דכתיב, כל אשר נשמת רוח חיים באפיו.
Okay, so can
Yeah.
you translate this? All right.
Okay,
If
I
you,
understand. That's what I asked myself. Why the way the baby was created? It doesn't say anything about the sign that that the person is still alive, and that's what they say here.
right.
So I don't
Right.
know why at all they
Wait,
they
first,
put in this discussion, and I
no,
don't
no, but
understand why.
first explain the Gemara that you just read. You already
Yeah.
assumed that you know what the Gemara means, but let's make sure everybody understands.
I think that, yeah.
Okay,
So
afilu
Bachurei
tema
Yeshiva do this a
abashu.
lot. They don't know Aramaic, but they know what's written.
Okay, but let's practice your
Yeah.
Aramaic. Afilu tema abashul. What does that mean?
And even if Abba Shaul asks
No,
himself,
even if you
wonders,
no. Tema again, like nema, ema, tema. Tema means even if you will say. Even if you
even if
say,
you, even Abba Shaul,
even
even
if
if
you say
you
Abba
say
Shaul,
Abba,
that's
you
what it
say Abba
literally
Shaul,
means. Uh, Even if you'll say Abba Shaul, read a little bit more and I'll explain how the
up,
language works. Adkan,
up to here,
yeah,
Loka Amar. He didn't say. He didn't
yeah.
say that.
He
Abba
didn't say,
Shaul,
yeah.
Abba Shaul Hatam,
Hatam. What's Hatam mean?
Hatam, Abba Shaul,
What
Tam,
does Hatam mean? Not it's not Abba Shaul Hatam that he's Tam. Hat and that would be with a
Head.
patach under the hay. It would be Abba Shaul Hatam. What does Hatam mean? Had this many times. Okay.
There.
Michael. There means there. Hatam is there, and Hacha
It's here.
is here. Okay. So Ad Kan Lo Ka'amar Abba Shaul Hatam. Abba Shaul didn't say until here over there. In other words, what is there? Remember, we use this term Hacha and Hatam. What do they mean in this context? What's there and what's here?
The former passage and the present passage. Or the
So you don't know which one, what is.
I've been dozing. I'm not.
Okay, no, but in general, Hacha, what is Hacha always going to mean? What is Hatam always going to mean?
Hacha means like the immediate prior passage.
Okay, so in this case, right, so it's going to be the prior passage, that is the first passage that we read, because that's what we're dealing with, right? We're dealing with the first one. The first one was Ad Heichan Hu Bodek. So that was
Okay.
that was the first Braita. That's Hacha. That's what we're in now. That's here. And then the second one is right, Hechan Notzar, where's the baby created from? That's Hatam. That's over there, because that's an outside source. It's a different source. So Ad Kan Lo Ka'amar Bashul Hatam, Abba Shaul didn't say what he said there in the second Braita, because he was only spoke in the second Braita. he didn't say that there. Ela linyan yitzira. He only made that comment, as Paul was pointing out,
Yes,
regarding the creation of the child, but he
yeah.
didn't mean to say that you can derive from that something about determining when someone's alive or dead. And why does
Mhm.
he say El Inyan Yetzira? And so why did he say what he said, that the child is created from the tibur? Decho mide mi mitziate mitzar. Anybody translate these words? Kol
Yeah.
mide. What's
And
mide?
all things are created from their center.
Very good. Excellent. Everything is created from its center. In other words, this was a shita that Abba Shaul had, that everything that gets created from its center, and then it pushes out. Aval inyan pikuach nefesh, but regarding pikuach nefesh, afilu Abba Shaul mode, even Abba Shaul acknowledges diikar chayuta ba'apehu, that the main life, that is the main sign of life,
Sign of life is in the
Right.
nose,
is in his nose,
yeah.
right? As it says, Kol asher nishmat ruach chayim ba'apav. And I want to take some time and look at this, but we're not going to do it now because I want to continue on in the sugya.
Okay, I'll have to leave in about 3 minutes.
Okay, so this is actually a good place for you to leave. We're going to go on to the next part, and hopefully you'll pick it up.
Okay.
You'll pick it up next time. So this part of the Gemara, so to answer, Paul wanted to know why this is brought at all. In other words,
It seems superfluous because it doesn't say anything.
Well,
No.
no. Okay, so um,
So the Gemara itself says that it doesn't.
it doesn't add, but the Gemara,
Yes,
why would the Gemara be interested to know if these Tanaim are like the other Tanaim? Why would they want to know that in principle, even if it doesn't work out? Why did they want to know that?
So maybe some people would claim that they want to recall that there might be a claim like that, but this claim is not acceptable. It doesn't.
I'd say a little different. Michael Schwartz, did you want to say something?
No, I don't know.
You can say I don't know also. Look, in general, the reason, because this pattern in the Gemara comes up elsewhere, right? Hani Tanai ki Hani Tanai. These Tanaim are like these Tanaim. If you can show that Tanaim match up, it the immediate reason might be to find out who you're going to paskin by. So sometimes we're going to, excuse me, sometimes we'll paskin by a particular Tana. So if I know that he paskins a similar thing elsewhere, then maybe it's going to be, then I could apply that to here, to my case. Or let's say if it's Rabbanan there and Rabbanan here, so usually I'm going to paskin by the majority, which is the Rabbanan, which is the Tanakama. And so maybe that will help. In other words, maybe it'll lend uh, some authority to the way I'm going to paskin. That's a simple reason, right? In general, remember that the Gemara, in general, their purpose is to determine halacha. That's what the Gemara is trying to do. It's trying to determine halacha. So why would I want to know if other Tanaim agree with these Tanaim or seem to coincide with these Tanaim? Because maybe it'll have a difference in terms of how I ultimately paskin. And so then we bring this braita that says where is the child created? And so Paul, or maybe all of us, right, could ask the question, Maza Kashur, like even if you would say that these Tanaim line up somehow, but to what purpose? That is, not just to what purpose, but um, how is it related? If let's say the child is created from the head, and you want to match that up with the opinion that says that we check until the nose, but why should that be relevant that the child was created from the head? Or why is it relevant that the child is created from the navel? How would that relate to determining signs of life and death? So we could talk about that more, but I don't think it's so important for us to do that, especially since the Gemara pushes it away. But so that's where we got up to here. Okay, so
But
now,
there's another problem that
sure, go ahead.
it looks, at least this claim, it looks that you will accept some, let's say, scientific. It's not, they were not scientific facts according to psukim. That's very strange. You shouldn't do such a thing because you have a pasuk which says this way. You have a proof text, and you do with this pasuk. You do a proof text, and you want to claim something which you should check objectively, not according to the pasuk.
This is what the modern man says.
Yes,
But
of course.
actually, we see in many cases that the Gemara derives the Gemara is going to use psukim as a descriptor of what we would consider to be an objective reality. This gets into a deeper conversation. In other words, but Paul, I completely understand what you're saying. In other words, you would say, what do I care if a pasuk says this or that or the other thing? I can I can detect this myself. However, I will point out in this case, in this particular, first, okay, wait, two things. So first of all, I'll just repeat myself.
It
In
depends what you
general,
want to decide. If
no,
you want
no,
to
but
decide
in general, in
it's in
general,
halacha, it's okay, but maybe, but not in
no, but
some
this is
objective
so
fact.
here. No, oh, so wait a second. So let's talk of first of all, in general, like I say, there are many cases where the Gemara points to psukim to that would seem to indicate something that we know from reality. So like there's a Gemara in Psachim that says that that you're supposed to use red wine when you're making kiddush because there's a pasuk that says yain ki yit adam, wine when it becomes or when it is red. It
That's
indicates.
okay. That's an halach. It's for the
So,
halachic
so what
decision.
makes
It's
you
okay.
think, Paul? Here, I'm
Yeah,
going to put it to
yeah.
you. What makes you think here that there's an objective reality? What are we trying to determine?
If he's alive,
If he's alive or dead?
dead, yes.
So how you tell me, what's the objective reality? How do you know when someone is alive or dead?
These doctors are going to decide. They change. No, but they
How do the
changed their mind
doctors
many
know?
times. But
How
they
do the
changed their mind
doctors
many
know?
times.
How do the doctors? Exactly. In other words, when it comes to death,
Mhm.
you would like to think there's an objective reality, but it's not so simple. In other words, one second, everyone say goodbye to Michael. Safe
Bye,
travels.
Bishya Tova.
Bye bye.
B'achem l'shalom. Okay, and yes, if you leave now, you should have plenty of time to get the nine. What is it? Nine? I wait. It's a little after 9. If you leave now, you should be fine. Right now, you can go downstairs, make a left, and there's a bus stop. Take the 15. No, if you, I mean, I didn't check the schedule, but
It's very frequent and very.
it's
Good. Bye bye.
bye-bye.
You are at home, at your home. You know that.
I'm at
Yakar,
home
it doesn't-
because I didn't think. Apparently, Yakar just assumed that I wasn't giving shir this week, and I went
It was closed.
and it was
Shut up.
locked.
Shut
So it's
up.
usually locked. There's a lock that you
Mm,
can open with a code, and I know the code.
mm,
But there's
mm,
also a key lock, and I don't have the key,
mm,
so it was key
mm,
locked, and I
mm,
only found that out at about 7:26.
mm,
So that's when I messaged everybody that I'll be late. Okay, so
mm,
so this is exactly a good point. In other words, we're going to look to Mikra to try to determine things that maybe are not so obvious, and this is definitely one of them. If you study this, what you said a moment ago, of course, it's true. And in different times in history, there were in different cultures, there were different criteria that were used for determining whether someone was alive or dead.
Even
And
today, they changed the criteria. Now they use the brain. So I don't know.
so we're going to talk about all that.
Mm,
And I'll give you even a little bit of the modern history of that, about
mm,
the concept of brain death and when that became popularly used in modern medicine.
mm,
But we see from the first Breitad, Hechan Hu Bodek, that there's already a machloket from the
mm,
Chachamim from
mm,
2,000 years ago
mm,
that seems to indicate that there's an opinion that says that
mm,
you determine death by cessation of respiration, right? When someone no longer breathes, and we'll add in the word
mm,
spontaneously, because there are also artificial ways of making people breathe, right? So if
mm,
somebody is no longer spontaneously breathing, according to the Tanakama, they are dead. And if they've stopped breathing, then you're not Mechal Shabbos for them anymore. According to the Yesh Omrim, you check until the heart. That seems to indicate you have to find out if there's a heartbeat. If there's a heartbeat, then you continue to be Mechal Shabbos. But if not, then you stop. You're not Mechal Shabbos if the heart is beating. I'm sorry, if the heart has stopped beating, even if you were to be able to check and find out that there seems to be some breathing. That's probably impossible, but the other side is not impossible, as we'll discuss. Um, Now I want to go, so we could dwell on this more, but we're going to come back to it. I want to continue on and read this next keta. So Michael Schwartz, Amarav Papa, and
Amarav,
go ahead.
okay. Amarav Papa, Machloket Mimata Lamala, Aval Mimala Lamata, Kivan Divdak Le Ad Chodmo, Shuv Eno Tzarik, Diktiv, Kol Asher Nishmat Ruach Chaim Ba'apav.
Okay, so what does Rav Papa say?
So Rav Papa says that the dispute um, is from below to above, but from above to below when uh, they when he's checked until the nose, uh, uh, the shuvein don't need to read. Um, Again, it doesn't need. It is not needed as it's written. All that caution is all that the breath of life is in his nose and his nostrils.
Okay, so which machoket is he talking about? There's a machoket from the bottom. What's mimata lamala and what's lamala mimata? Let's start from that. What does he mean from?
I think it's from the bottom to the top would be from the heart to the nose.
Right, or let's say from the bottom of the body, right, from the lower part of the body to the upper part of the body. Let's make it more general.
Okay.
So the machloket is if you're starting from the lower part of the body and moving up. So meaning what? Let's
Oh,
say,
maybe well,
go ahead.
uncovering
Yeah.
from the lower part of the body to the upper part.
Right. That's our context. Adhechan hu bodek is a Braita that's explaining our Mishnah, and our Mishnah is about someone upon whom a mapolet fell. So now Rav Papa comes and he explains this machloket between the Tana Kama and the Yesh Omrim, that until where do you check? The machloket is only if you started from the lower part of the body and you were moving up. So let's say you found his legs, and we'll add in what Rashi says. You find the legs, and he's not moving. So you keep uncovering until you get to the heart. So the Yesh Omrim says, once you get to the heart, then if his heart is not beating, then you stop. And the Tanakama says, even if the heart isn't beating, you have to continue up to the nose. Aval mimala lamata, right? But these two deot, these two opinions, when it comes to the case where you started at the top of the body, the upper part of the body, meaning from the head, and you're going down, so you uncover the head and you get to his nose, kevan divdak lead chotmo, once you've checked till his nose, shuv enot tzarich, then more than that you don't need.
Oh,
Okay, in other words, so Rav Papa is saying, even according to the Yesh Omrim, who says ad libo, he only says that for the purpose of keeping, of continuing to check, and to he only says that because the Yesh Omrim says ad libo, because that would be if you came across the heart first. According to him, if the heart is no longer beating, then there's no point in checking anymore. But he agrees with the Tanakama that if the person is breathing, you don't have to continue to check to see if his heart is beating. Okay?
Right, but if he's breathing, you have to dig him out anyway to save him.
So that
So
now,
you will,
this
so
is the
you will
point.
get to the heart anyway.
Okay, no, well, wait a second. You will get to the heart anyway, but what's the difference? What does Rav Papa tell me? How does Rav Papa change my understanding of the halacha? What did Rav Papa do now that I didn't assume before? So let's go through the possibilities. Before I had Rav Papa, right? We discussed this, but let's do it again. According to the Braita, according to the Tanakama, who says Ad Chot Mo, right? You have to check until you get to his nose. So if you started from the lower part of the body and you continued up and you got to the heart and the heart wasn't beating, what would the Tanakama say to do?
you have to keep going
Yeah.
until the
Please
nose.
go.
You have
Yes.
to keep going until the nose.
Mhm.
Okay? And if the nose is breathing, then then you dig him entirely out, and if it's not, you leave him. And according to the Yeshomrim that says ad libo, if you're starting from the bottom and going to the top, and you come to the heart, and the heart is no longer beating, what would you do?
You stop.
You would stop, right? Because he says ad libo, you don't go any further. And that would be their machloket. Without Rav Papa, let's do it the other way. If I started from the top and he's not breathing. So according to the Tanakama, what would I do?
You would stop at that
Mhm.
point.
And according to the Yesh Omrim, what would I do?
You keep going until you get to the heart.
You would keep going until you get to the heart. So comes Rav Papa. So what does Rav Papa say? What does he change about this then?
So he's in that second scenario when you're coming from the top, if you get to the nose and he's no longer breathing, wouldn't continue to the heart, which is in contradiction to the Yesh Omrim.
Well, but what he's saying is that even the Yesh Omrim agrees with that. In other words, that's his
Oh,
chidush,
okay.
right?
Yes. In
So,
the
right,
first, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
right. So Amar Rav Papa machloket mimata lamala. The only time that the Yesh Omrim said that that the lave is a sign that you need to pay attention to. That's if you started from the lower part of the body and you were moving up. But if you started from the top of the body and you're moving down, that is, if you come to the nose first before you come to the heart, even the Yesh Omrim would say you stop. If he's no longer breathing, then you stop. There's nothing more to check for it. In other words, you're not going. And then the question would be why? Why, according to the person, right? According to the Yesh Omrim who says ad libo, why would you stop after you determine he's no longer breathing?
Because he's this support from the pasuk that says that the nishmat ruach is in the nostrils.
Okay, so right, dichtiv kol shenishmat ruach chaim be'apav, which we understand is a proof text to tell us that you determine whether someone is alive or not by whether or not they're breathing, right? As long as they are breathing, they're considered to be alive. So then the question is, what's the relevance of checking the heart at all? So this is where it's going to get interesting. This is where it becomes
Hasn't been
interesting.
interesting.
This is where it gets more interesting. Okay, so in other words, we might have thought without Rav Papa, we would say, like we said earlier in this year, and I think we said this last week, that each of them, the Tanakama and the Yesh Omrim, each have a different criterion for determining whether someone is alive or dead. And according to the Tanakama, it's whether they're breathing or not. And according to the Yesh Omrim, it's whether their heart is beating or not. And so what if you determine that someone's heart is beating, but they're not breathing? So according to the way we understood it to begin with, right, if the heart is beating, even if they're not breathing, you have to continue to be Machal Shabbos for them. But now Rav Papa comes and says, that's not really true, because according to both the Tanakhama and the Yesh Omrim, if you determine that they're no longer breathing, there's nothing more to check. There's nothing more to check. But according to the Yesh Omrim, if you determine that, if you were to determine that the heart stopped beating, he would still say that there's nothing more to check for. I feel like I need to make a chart, but you see, all right, but you see what I'm saying. In other words,
Yeah.
uh, the 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 simple let's say the simple conclusion from this, I don't know if it's simple or not, but the basic conclusion that seems to come out of Rav Papa is that the real determination of whether someone is alive or dead is if they're breathing.
So breathing, it is
Right?
breathing.
So the
Yes.
question is, so what was according to the Yesh Omrim, who says that you that you check for the heart. Now we understand that that's only in the case you only check the heart if you haven't already determined whether or not he's breathing. Once you know he's not breathing, everyone, even the Yesh Omrim, holds that this person is dead. What's the machloket? The machloket between the Tanakama and the Yeshomrim is only if you come across the heart before you came across the nose. So according to the Yeshomrim, if the heart is no longer beating, then there's no more point in checking. So what would be the reason why that there would be no more point in checking? Why would the Yeshomrim say if the heart stopped beating that there's nothing more to check for?
Maybe because he holds, or they hold, that beating heart is also a sign of life.
Well, in what sense would it be a sign of life? In other words, so the only proof text that we brought for sign of life is Kol Shenishmat Ruach Chaim Be'apav. So what might I say? According to the Yeshomrim, if you come across the heart first and the heart has stopped beating, what would the Yeshomrim say? He would say to stop digging. Why would he say to stop digging? So
Maybe
go ahead.
maybe he believes that you can't have breath without the heartbeat.
So this would be a reasonable assumption that according to the Yeshomrim, if the heart is no longer beating, why does that mean I don't continue to dig? That is, I'm not going to continue to be Mechal Shabbos for this person, because his assumption will be that there will be no more breath. So you don't even have to check. There's no point in checking because the heartbeat is stopped. And the Tanakhama would say no. Even if you can't detect heartbeat, he could still be breathing. And so now, even without, so before we get into what we learn from modern medicine, before we get into that, this would seem to be the machloket, that according to the Yeshomrim, if there's no heartbeat, there will be no breath, so there's no point in checking. And according to the Tanakhama, even if there is no heartbeat, there could still be breath. And so you do have to keep checking. Let's see how Rashi says this. Paul, why don't you read Rashi? Hachi Garsinan.
אחי גר סינן, אמר רב פאפא, מחלוקת מלמטה למעלה. So Rav Papa said there is a machloket concerning from which way you dig him out, if it's from the downside to the upper side. Machloket dehimcha tanai.
It's the Hanach Tanai. The
Hanach Tanai. This is a machloket of the Tanaim, no? The Hanach.
Of the Hanach, Elu Tanai, right? This is the machloket.
The machloket between those Tanaim. Damar Amar, who said, At libo, Umar Amar, At chotmo. Well, some Tanaim said up to the heart, and Amar, Rabbanim, and another Tanai said up to his nostrils.
Okay.
Milamata lamala. From downstairs, from the
let's say from below.
From the lower from the lower to the upper side. Shemotzio derech margalotav tchila, which means that you dig him out first by the legs. You start with the legs to dig him out, starting by the legs.
You found him, right? Yeah, which means that you dug him out, but you found him from the legs or from the lower part of his body first.
And you check to
You check and go, right? You keep
in the
checking.
direction of his head. You go up
Uh-huh.
to this upper part of the body. The Maramar. But then other Tanai said
It's actually the
it's
same.
the same mar, yes.
Yeah, the mar, we
Okay.
had one mar who said ad libo and another mar who said ad chotmo,
Says Ad Chotmo,
right?
okay.
Right? The mar mar
But
bilibo.
this we come back to the Maramar בליבו, יש להבחין אם יש בו חיות. This Mar says we have to check by the heart if there's still life in the body, if he is still alive.
Not just that we have
שנשמתו
to check.
דופק.
Yesh lahavchin. In other words, with his heart, we can check, we can determine if he's alive. Right? By looking at the heart, we can determine
He
if he's
claims
alive.
that by checking the heart we can decide that he is still alive.
Why? She.
שנשמתו דופקת שם.
Okay, what does that
that
mean?
he's well, I understand. The fact that his heart is still beating, this means that he still has breath. The breath comes from the heart or something like this.
Yeah, so here this word nishmato, nishmato dofeket sham, you're right. That in other words, what is Rashi trying to do? He's trying to understand everybody holds that the basis for determining life is really based on this pasuk of ki kol asher nishmat ruach chayim ba'apav. So if the heart is beating, that means, according to the Yesh Shomrim, that's the mar bilibo, you can determine if there's still life because his breath is beating there. Now, I don't want to, read too much into this, but I think what you could understand Rashi that Rashi is trying to make us understand that this Tana thought that the breath comes
from the heart.
Comes from the heart. So you can detect it from the heartbeat. That there's a one-to-one correspondence.
But it's still the breathing. So
right, it would still seem to be based on breathing, but he just says if the heart's no longer beating, then there is no more breath.
There's
no
breath,
more point in checking.
So the beats of the heart are a proof. They prove if the person is still breathing or not. Yes.
In other words, yes. No, I'm just saying this is a topic I've done a fair amount of research on, so I understand that the idea. I don't know enough about ancient medicine, what they believe, but this would seem to be the case that what Rashi is saying here is that this Tana thought that the heartbeat was what was causing the breath. That's what's making the breath come out. That the neshama is there, meaning the breath is there. The idea that the heart is beating in order to circulate blood, I don't think that was discovered, I don't think that was proven scientifically until like the 16th or 17th century. Until then, people didn't understand that blood circulated. and there was a completely different understanding of the purpose of the heart. And it would seem, without trying to, push too much into this, that this was the understand that Rashi is saying this was the understanding of the Yesh Omrim. But it still has to be related to neshama, that it's because the proof text is from neshama. So according to this, the Maramar, B'libo yesh lavchinim yesh bo chayut, you can check, if you check the heart, you can determine whether or not there's life, because his breath is coming from, is beating from the heart. So if you're checking milamata lamala and you find that the heart is still beating, that means that he must still be alive because he must still be breathing.
Mm.
And only if you go up to the nose and find out that there's no more breath, then you would stop. But according to the Maramar, right? So let's continue.
The other Tanakh.
Mhm.
עד חותמו, דזמנים, דאין חיות ניכר בליבו, וניכר בחותמו.
Right, so zimnim means sometimes, right? Zimnim literally means zmanim, right? So
זמנים.
right? So sometimes, dein chayut nikar
Sometimes, even if the heart is not beating, you may still be breathing. So it's the breathing which decides if he is still alive.
Okay, so in other words, the Mar who says ad chotmo, he holds that you can't use if you only see the heart and the heart isn't beating, that's not proof that he's not breathing. Because sometimes ein hayut nikar b'libo, sometimes the life is not recognized by the heart, meaning the heartbeat, but v'nikar b'chotmo, but it is recognized by the nose, by the breathing. That is, there's a phenomenon. He's saying there's a phenomenon where you maybe cannot detect a heartbeat, but the person could still be breathing. And so the only thing go ahead.
Wait. Look, there are three periods, and maybe the understanding changed between. There is the period of the Tanakh. I don't know, 500, 600, 700 before, not.
Let's say a long time later.
A long time ago. Then you have the period of the Chachamim, and then you have the period of Rashi. And I don't know. I don't think that the understanding was the same from one period to the other. It's very strange.
No, but I think what you're trying to do is you're trying to lay on to the Gemara and Rashi what you think medical knowledge would have been, but that's not necessarily what Rashi's trying to do.
But
Rashi's just trying to understand the Gemara. In other words, Rashi's
but he must be even if he only tries to understand the Gemara, he understands according to his understanding of the
That's true, but he's going to start by he's going to start by looking
the same
at
way we do today. We understand it according to our knowledge, to the way we understand the world.
I understand, but I think it's fair to say that Rashi's first concern is just making a reading in the Gemara. So, in other words, if Rashi reads the Gemara, and that contradicts what he understands to be true in the real world, so maybe he would have to modify the way he learns the Gemara. Listen, I'll give you an example because, Paul, I know that this is very important to you. And I'll just say in general, if you learn the sugyot in Nida, Masechet Nida, there's in those sugyot, there are references to the anatomy of a woman. It talks about, it's important to understand the anatomy of a woman, about the uterus and the birth canal and all of these things which are discussed in the Gemara. And without going into details, because also I haven't looked at the Sugyot in a long time, but it's clear that when you learn those Gemaras and you look at Rashi, Rashi understood those Gemaras almost certainly, this is in my humble opinion, he understood them almost certainly based on just the way he understood the words of the Gemara, because he didn't know anything about women's anatomy. He wasn't a doctor. He never dissected a cadaver, and he didn't study medicine. And so when you learn Rashi there, you'll see that it's very hard to line Rashi up with what we know to be true physically about a woman's anatomy. Whereas if you learn the Rambam, who was a doctor, and even if he never cut up a cadaver, but he learned medicine from Greek sources, and they actually had a pretty good idea of women's anatomy. And so when the Rambam learned those Gemaras, he understood them much more accurately in terms of actual anatomy. So the reason I'm pointing this out is that, and there are other examples of this, but that's a good example where that's a good example to illustrate what I'm trying to say, which is Rashi mainly was trying to learn the Gemara. He was doing the best he could with the text in front of him. I'll give you one other example, which might be a little bit something you've already come across yourself. If you learn Rashi in Parshat Maseh, for example, Rashi, if and I've done this, you look at Rashi where it's talking about the different stations that Bnei Israel were in, the time that they were in the Midbar. If you were to try to draw out a map based on what Rashi says, your map
He
would be
didn't understand the
completely.
geography.
He didn't know the geography. So what Rashi was doing is he was learning the text as best he could from that text. And Rashi, of course, knew all of Tanakh, and he tried to do it based on other things that he knew. But it came out it just came out wrong. It's not the actual geography. The Ramban, who actually went to Eretz Yisrael, I don't, and he, I'll just say, B'kitzur, his understanding of the geography is far more accurate. And he talks, he says that Rashi's wrong, right? So all I'm saying is here, when we look at our Gemara and Rashi says, "Shnishmato dofeket sham," my claim is Rashi's simply trying to understand the Gemara, and the way I've laid it out is Bein le Tanakama, the Bein le Yesh Omrim, everybody seems to point to this pasuk of Kol Asher Nishmat Ruach Chaim Be'apav. And so there is an understanding, according to everybody, that what really determines life is if a person is breathing. And Rashi then has to say, so what's the real machloket? That the Yesh Omrim, who says belibo, you check to the lave, he has to understand that if the heart is beating, that means that the person is still
Person is
breathing.
also breathing. Yeah.
That's all I'm trying to say. So however Rashi understood, or to what degree he understood medicine in his day and age, I'm not sure if that came into play in this particular question, but also knowing a little bit about the history of this, about determination of death. I think this is a very old machloket, not just amongst the Tanakhama and the Yesh Omrim, that people thought if there's no heartbeat that the person is dead, and that people would say no, only if you stop breathing. And in halacha, of course, it's important for us to know exactly when we have to know whether a person is alive or dead for many different halachic purposes. So just to take one, if you're a Kohen, you're not allowed to be under the same roof as a mate. And I'll throw this in. It's after 9 o'clock, but I'll just throw this in. Uh, I'll be happy to give you more sources about this. It's something I do want to talk about more. But there's a tshuva from the Chatam Sofer, and I don't remember the exact date. I can look it up, but it's in the early 19th century, maybe like the 1810, 1820, 1830, somewhere around there. That apparently in one of the kingdoms there was a law that was passed that that one could not declare somebody to be dead until they left the body for 3 days.
Yeah,
And
that's still the case in Europe today. Yeah.
okay,
You
that's still the
can, yeah,
case. Okay,
yeah,
so
yes.
it's going back to that time, right? So
Mm,
he was in Hungary. I'm not sure if the Shiloh was asked from Hungary or from somewhere else, but was somewhere in Europe. And what was the Shiloh? The uh, there was a doctor who was a Kohen, and um, the Shiloh was, would he be allowed to be the one to check to see if this person is dead after 3 days? Because the the idea of the law, what the idea of the law was that there was this fear that spread in Europe that they didn't want to bury people who were alive.
mm.
And they were afraid that if they buried somebody too early, maybe they're actually condemning them to death. And so they made this gzeira that you have to leave the body for 3 days. So
Right.
the
There were cases when the person in its
yeah,
how do you
pushed
call
from
it?
the coffin,
It
right, or
pushed the
cried out.
coffee off.
Right. So how many cases there were, it's not clear. I remember reading
Mm,
in Ripley's Believe It or
mm.
Not a long time ago, and Michael,
The coffee. Mm,
right, that
mm,
apparently there were, so maybe all it took was one case that happened, and then
mm, mm.
everybody got
It's
really
enough.
afraid. It was enough, and people said, okay.
Mm,
So you had to
mm,
leave the body for 3 days. So the Shiloh was, if you're the doctor, but you're a Kohen, are you allowed to be the one to check the body? Because maybe the body still is alive after 3 days. And
mm.
so the Chatam Sofer writes a tshuva where he talks about determination of death. And to make a long story short, he says, listen, once a person stops breathing, they are dead for all halachic purposes. And oddly enough, there are people, well, okay, I'll leave it at that, except I'll say this machloket continues in a sense until this day. And I'll talk more about it next time. I'll give you a little bit of the modern history and how the modern definition of brain death came about, what brought that about, and how poskim understand that in relationship to this Gemara. I'll leave that for next time because it's a long story. But yeah, Adkan, any last questions or comments? Okay, listen, Chag Sameach. Thanks for
Purim
joining me,
Sameach. Mm.
and hopefully next
תודה.
week I will join you from Yakar.
Good night. Thank
Okay.
you.
Bye
Laila
bye.
Tov.
תודה.
Bye.